Hi everyone, it's Sunyard here. Today's article is going to be about quieting the mind. What is quieting the mind, and what are the effects on ourselves when we quiet the mind, and also the benefits that you will result from quieting the mind. So, quieting the mind has been a long practice that has been used. It's often referred to as quietism by the Greeks, which was a sort of a practice, meditation type of act where one would quieten his mind and sort of take in all the information. So you find often the statues with the sort of man resting on his chin there, thinking about things, and not only thinking, but I guess thinking is a kind of contradiction to it, because it's the lack of thinking which is the thought. So why does it have a good impact on us? And one of the reasons is because a lot of the thoughts that are the thought monopoly, or the major thoughts that are going around, which pop out in our mind because that's what we've been bred to think, is a negative sort of thought process. So generally the thoughts that we encounter today are a bit more controlling. They want to sort of make us think in a particular way. I've made references in other videos where we've been taught to think in sort of a materialist point of fashion, or a scientific fashion, or a logical fashion, capitalist sort of fashion. So those sort of thoughts are sort of controlling us in our daily lives, in that they might not necessarily be negative, but in the bigger scheme of things, you'll probably find that if you want a more spiritual life, that there will be a bit of extra baggage. If you want to understand a bit more about life, those thoughts will get in your way, because we've been taught to think in a skeptical fashion, and that has that impedes on spiritual progress. So that's a big one, is that silencing the mind is very good, because we have a lot of impure thoughts. Now think about this one. How often when you see someone that you don't necessarily agree with, your mind throws you negative things about them and blames them in negative ways. If you get a teammate who's not good, you'll want to say, their mind wants to say they're a bad player, they're not good. Or if you meet someone in a physically different way, your mind points it out and calls them certain things. So that's the way in which our thoughts can be quite negative in certain times. Other times they can be positive too. But we do find that it's probably better to silence the mind if you have been around a lot of people. So if you were raised up in a fairly normal lifestyle or education, chances are the way you think is a bit more controlled. It's not your own thinking, it's what you've been taught to think. And that's why silencing the mind is a good thing, because it means you can just silence everything going on there, because there's usually racing thoughts all the time, defending ourselves, doubting things, all that sort of thing. If you can silence all that, then you can start off with your own point of view. So generally we have too many thoughts going on, and another reason, that is another reason why it's actually beneficial to silence the mind, first and foremost, is because we've just got too many thoughts. If you have a look at a cat trying to catch a bird, it's so fixed and focused on going to catch the bird. I saw this film where that was happening. It was a leopard, and a fly is distracting it in its nose. It's flying in its eyeballs, and actually lets the fly sit on its eyeball. It doesn't blink. It doesn't try and push it out the way. It's completely focused, and that is an example of complete concentration, and not letting anything distract you, because you can't think deep in any sort of way. You can't think deep mathematically if you've got all these things distracting you. If you're worried about having hot water, or you're worried about that the chicken's going to sell out at the KFC, if you've got these things in your conscious mind bugging you, you're not going to be able to see the true equation as well. You're not going to be able to perceive it as well as you would as if you were able to just push that all aside and just completely think from a point of view which allows you to have a full stage there all to yourself. So that's why it's important that we don't let these other thoughts in our lives control us. It's very important. So the result of quieting our minds is that we can see deeper into life, and we can also experience less anxiety, because a lot of the thoughts today that we experience are doubts. A lot of them are thoughts which are us, the possibility of us not achieving, the possibility of us not doing this. It's a lot of it's fear and doubt. And fear and doubt is honestly what will be your biggest deterrent. It will be your biggest demon will be your own fear and doubt. So when you can quieten the mind, you will be able to not be so anxious about everything. What if this happens? What if that happens? It's not that calculating way that's trying to think of all the possibilities, because it's too much. And if you're trying to perceive the life, you can't think like that, because you'll be scared of this. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? It's too much for the mind to take. Turn it off. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for anyone around you, because it will only cause you problems. If you can turn it off, that off switch, and you can have that peace, it's all silent, and you can just start here. You slowly look around the room, look at the trees, and you haven't even thought a thing. It's wonderful. You can think much deeper and not be distracted by your own thoughts. So that is the problem, is that our own thoughts, our own messages our mind sends us are distractions. They are problems too. They become problems when they're trying to rationalize things. If you see something which is not ordinary, if you see something, anything, your mind will always try and rationalize it. It's true. It's the way your mind is being taught to think. It's been taught to think, to rationalize the information that you experience. So it'll say, oh, it was probably this, oh, it's probably that. Even if it's like, oh, last night I fell asleep, it was probably because I was tired, it was probably because of this. Rather than just, last night I fell asleep, it's always trying to rationalize a reason, and a reason that's within the social bubble of what's acceptable. So you're always trying to use this reasonable explanation for what's inside the social bubble. So using the social bubble to verify what you see. And a lot of the times, you've got to bring it down to a low level when you do that, because remember how when we experience things, it's on a higher plane, and then when we bring it down to our level, when we bring it down to thoughts, we rationalize it, because that's the only way our thoughts can comprehend such possibilities, such profound experiences. That's the only way we can make sense of them with our thoughts, is by rationalizing them. And a lot of the times when we rationalize the information, we often have to deny it. We have to deny our experiences to rationalize it, to fit into what we've been taught to think. So the important thing here is that we are not here to deceive ourselves. We are not here to not see the truth. We want to see the truth. And being controlled by these thoughts, which is rationalizing everything, is not the truth. It's not saying that the truth is everything else. It's just saying that if you want to comprehend the truth, you have to have the ability to accept it. You can't comprehend the truth if you're just going to doubt it straight away. So that's a very good way to build yourself up, is by being able to quieten the mind. If you get a negative thought, you can just quieten it. You won't even get a negative thought, because you've already quietened the mind. So that is how quieting the mind has had medical benefits for people. You can find on certain texts that they'll show that meditation has health improvements, that people have a better heart rate, or they have a better blood pressure, and so on. It all gets better when you quiet the mind, because quieting the mind causes anxiety. Anxiety causes angst or fear, and those perceived fears cause us to be they cause us to sweat, high blood pressure, and we often experience fear and those sort of negative emotions which are not good for you. So I've been through this, and anxiety was a big problem for me achieving when I was in high school or when I was younger. You knew you could do the exam, but the only thing standing in your way was the anxiety, and you were so scared that you'd fail that you wouldn't go to the exam. So that's really the irony behind it, is that the anxiety literally, or the thoughts can literally grab our feet and stop us in our tracks, because we're scared of the possibilities. When we choose to not make a decision because our thoughts have caused us to become perplexed. And that's really how thoughts can, although thoughts seemingly are one step ahead, is projecting one step ahead, that one step ahead can be our one step backwards, our downfall. So if we really just didn't think at all, we'd be one step ahead. And which is a bit of a contradiction, because we've got all this science and technology and so on and so forth. But when it comes down to you performing and understanding and your self-mastery, it's going to come down to you quieting your mind. You don't see an Olympic who's thinking about all these other things, and he's running the race, and he's thinking about, oh yeah, I'm going to go home and I'm going to have a steak, I'm going to cook, I better call up Janet and see if she's coming to our barbecue next week. Oh, Janet, what's happening? Where are you going? Meanwhile, he's running the marathon, all these people are going past him, and he's staying in a tree. You're like, oh, you got to make sure we have enough water and milk there. So you see the Olympians, they're completely focused. And that's what it is. Quieting the mind is focus. If you have a look at the video that I made there, which is about visualization, it'll explain there as well how first we visualize something and then we do it by not thinking about it, and that is the complete self-mastery of it. Regulation without regulation, doing it without thinking, and that's what it comes down to as quietism as well. It's doing this whole spirituality thing, whatever you want to call it, define it. It's doing this life thing. You're inside this body. You're inside it. It's doing this life without thinking about it all the time. It's just doing it. Just go, And, a lot of people think about it, and that is what's holding them back, is their own thoughts, their own doubts, their own expectations, their own fears. Rather than thinking about all that, just go do it. Just do it. Just go see for yourself. Go look for the answers. Don't doubt. Don't criticize. Don't be skeptical. Because when we have a look at the magnitude of our lives, we have a look at what's happening around us. We're animals, and we're living in these huge advancements in technology. We can literally change the color of our baby's eyes. We can choose their hair color when they're born now by the science. The science in 10 years is estimated to be able to make a computer the size of a cell. That's how far life is ahead of our thoughts. Our thoughts only bring life down. They only bring it to a much more closed version of what it really is. Life is amazing. It is amazing. And if you can open yourself up to that life, you will be amazed. You will be perplexed just by simply the amazement of life. It is really astonishing. And most people don't even understand how remarkable it is just for a tree to be there. That in itself is a mystery, let alone how we can be born here in this life. That is something that we cannot come to terms with, and thoughts will only bring us further from that. So don't think. Learn to quieten the mind, and then you can think when you've learned to control those. And that's not something that one can just master. It's an ongoing thing that everyone must do. And if you stop doing it, you'll lose that ability. Okay, so that's very important. Thanks very much for watching, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.